he's also doing some work at Princeton. He's the author of over 100 articles. And how many books, Chris?
15.
15, all right. So if you think you have to write a lot for your class, try to with him. Okay. He has also served for the U.S. bishops in a number of different capacities. He's served over in the Vatican with some stuff that they do. Talk about that. And I'll just stop there and let Dr. Kaczor go ahead and Dr. Kaczor, please.
So I wanted to talk to you today about happiness and how it relates to the dignity of the human person. Because in healthcare, it's all about serving others and it's about the individual patients that you're helping. And so I want to talk about the link between those two things. Because, as you probably know, there are rival views about what happiness is. And so I want to talk about those rival views, but I also want to talk about how they relate to the human person. So, but first I want to say thank you to everyone who's involved in getting me here and hosting me. I went out for crawfish last night, and that was very fun, except for I was opening up the thing, and I didn't bring attention close. I opened up something and it went. So if you see little crawfish on my jacket or whatever, I hope you're not mercy and forgive me because I enjoyed it a lot, but I got a little souvenir. Anyway, so happiness. There's been a lot of research done in the last 20 years about the nature of happiness. And what the researchers discovered might surprise you. So let me ask you a question. Who do you think is more happy on average if you compare men and women? Right? Who is going to be more happy on average? So obviously if you take a particular man, maybe you're super happy, and a particular woman, maybe you're not, or vice versa. But I'm not talking about one in particular. I mean, you have 100,000 men, 100,000 women, you average it all up. Who's going to be more happy?
I think men.
You think men, okay.
Because they don't sweat it.
All right, so maybe men, good, good. Anybody think women? Women are more happy? Women are more happy, okay. Couple on that, okay. Well, the interesting thing is, the research shows at least, that there's no significant difference on average between men and women. That's kind of surprising. So what about this? What about race? Does that make a difference for happiness? If you compare on average, again, obviously with an individual person, but on average, if you compare, say, white people with African Americans, any difference there? No? You think it's equal? Okay. Any other thoughts? Stephen? Yeah, well, it turns out that the research shows that there is no significant difference between the races in terms of happiness. It just, it's kind of a wash. Right? So, what does make a difference for happiness? Well, a couple things. One is genetics. So it turns out that the researchers say at least that we have a happiness set point. And that's basically that, and you see this in kids, right? You probably see little kids that they're on the playground or even younger, in preschool, little tiny kids. Like some of them are just kind of upbeat and kind of filled with joy, whatever. And then other kids are just kind of not as much, right? So you have genetic differences, just like you have with health. Right? Some people are born and they're very strong and they hardly ever get a cold and they've lived at 95 and they're just very healthy. And then other people are born and they've got asthma, they've got this problem, that problem, and they're not as healthy. So happiness is a little bit like health in that some people just are lucky. They're born kind of upbeat and that's just the way it is. Some people think that circumstances make a big difference for happiness. That if I just get a new job, or I just get a raise at work, or I just move to wherever, to the big city, or if you're in the big city, you move out of the big city, whatever. People think, if I get a new circumstance, that's going to make a difference. Some people think, if I just move to California, then I'll be really happy. Now, I live in Southern California, so people out there are saying, well, if I just move to Hawaii, then I'll be really happy. And if you live in Hawaii, I don't know what you do. You say, I'm out of luck. Where can I go from there? Anyway, Las Vegas, yeah, I know. But it turns out that changes in circumstances actually don't make a big difference for happiness. And the reason is that people get used to whatever circumstances they have to find themselves in, right? So for instance, it is true that where I live, Southern California, has very nice weather. Definitely true. Especially if you compare it to Chicago, where it's really cold. But the fact is, if you move to Southern California, maybe the first winter, you're like, this is amazing, it's 70 degrees, January 15th, this is so great. But after you live there for, a while, you're just totally used to it. You're not like amazed and just, overjoyed at things, at the great weather. Right? And so we can't change their genetics, clearly, right? We can't go back and be conceived by different parents, so that's not going to happen. Changes in circumstances only make about 50% difference for happiness, so that is something, is not going to make any difference. So what can make a big difference? Well, there's about 40% of happiness, according to researchers, that we do have control over. We can do something about. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk to you about the 40%, things that we can change and do something about. Now, there's different activities people do to try to become more happy. And I want to talk about 4 different kinds of activities, 4 different kinds of people. So the hedonist is someone who tries to get more happiness through bodily pleasure, right? So they're going to drink alcohol, they're going to take drugs, they're going to have sex, they're going to lay on the beach, they're going to do whatever they can do to boost bodily pleasure. That's what they think their happiness is based on. The second kind of person, I'll call this person the egoist, tries to find more happiness through being better than others. Right? So that person would say, look, I'm going to try to find happiness through being more rich than you are, or more famous than you are, or more, powerful than you are. And then I think, well, if I just do that, right, if I'm more powerful than you are, I take jujitsu and I get really strong and I can beat anyone up, well, then I'm going to be happy. Third kind of person I want to talk to you about, I'll call the altruist. And the altruist tries to find happiness not by being better than others, but in serving others. Right? They find happiness through giving to other people and helping other people. Okay? And the final person I want to talk to you about, I'll call the altruist of faith. And that person is somebody who tries to find happiness through loving others and through loving God. Both. Okay. So let's talk about these 3 kinds of people and how they find happiness. So the first kind of person I said that is a hedonist. And I'll talk about level 1 happiness. That's what they're after. And so they're after happiness that you can get through drinking alcohol, sex, food, drugs, lying on the beach in the sun, whatever. So it's bodily pleasure. And it is true that level 1 happiness has very significant advantages and a plus side. For instance, it's very easy to get, right? I mean, can you find drugs or alcohol in this city somewhere? I'm guessing probably you can, right? No alcohol, it's a dry city. All right, I stand corrected. It's a dry, all right.
Come to football season.
Yeah. So that's easy to get, right? That's really easy to get. And secondly, it's very immediate, right? I mean, I don't know, is this filled with what? Vodka? What's in here? So if she drank that whole thing, it's filled with vodka, right? How long would it take you to feel something from that? Yeah. I mean, you'd probably feel it 3, 4, 5 minutes, whatever. I mean, you wouldn't have to drink that whole thing and wait 3 weeks and be like, oh, what do you think? Do I feel anything? You would feel it right away. Right? So level 1 happiness has some real advantages, and it's also quite overwhelming. Right? If you drank that much, you would feel something very intense. So level 1 happiness has some advantages. But if we're going to be balanced, we have to talk not just about the advantages, right, but also about the disadvantages. And level 1 also has some significant disadvantages. Now, one of them is that level 1, as I just said, comes on really quickly, but it also leaves really quickly, right? I mean, think about the level 1 happiness we get from eating food, right? You're hungry, and you go get a hamburger, you get some crawfish, whatever, and you're eating, it tastes great. But then, once you're done with the milkshake or whatever, it's over, it's gone, right? And you don't really have it anymore. It's like here, and then it's not there anymore. So that seems like a disadvantage. Another disadvantage to level 1 happiness is that it doesn't seem really significant and meaningful, right? I mean, it's hard to see, the importance of this. At least at my university, they give out awards at graduation, right? And they give out awards like the best physics major, the best English student, the best this, the best that. They don't give out any level 1 awards, right? They don't say, congratulations, Frank, you drank more beer than any senior in your class. That's wonderful. Good job. That's just amazing. Well, no, right? We don't really care about that. And the fact is, level 1 also has a huge disadvantage that it can lead to addiction, right? Think about drug addicts, alcohol addicts, etc. And addiction seems to be the very opposite of happiness. right? I mean, don't we think of addicts as not the most happy people around at all? In fact, aren't addicts kind of the least happy people we know? They're enslaved, really, to their level 1. So that seems like a huge disadvantage. Nevertheless, level 1 is attractive, right? And I know this from my own experience. I remember I mentioned this at dinner last night. When I was a teenager, I went to a priest and I said, "Father, is it a sin to get drunk?" He said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "I have another question for you, Father. Father, is it a mortal sin to get drunk?" He said, "Yes, it is." Okay, all right. And I said, "All right, Father, I got a last question for you. How much can I drink before it's a mortal sin?" And he said to me, "You can drink as much as you want that's compatible with loving God with your whole heart and loving your neighbor as yourself." That's a pretty good answer. That's a pretty good answer. So to put it in different terms, you can have level 1 happiness as much as you want, so long as it doesn't get in the way of level 3 and level 4 happiness, the happiness of the altruist and the happiness of the altruist of faith, right? That's kind of what he was getting at. There's nothing wrong with enjoying a good meal, having a glass of wine, nothing wrong with any of those things. But it does become problematic, right? For instance, if you have wine and then you go drive a car and you drive drunk. Well, that's a problem. Why? Because it interferes with the higher levels of happiness. It gets in the way of, right? Level 3 and level 4, respecting other people, making sure the roads are safe and everyone's getting home on time, safe and everything, right? So these levels of happiness, ideally, you have all of them. But at least sometimes we have to choose, right? We have to choose between level 1 and level 2, right? Like, for instance, if you have a job, right? You might want more level 1. Sleep in, right? Nice and warm in bed, cozy. It would be great to sleep in more. But if you want level 2, you want to get a job, you want to get a raise, you want to get more money, well, you got to get up. So you have to choose. I'm going to get more level 1 and sleep in, or I'm going to have level 2 and get out of bed and go to work, right? And level 2 and level 3 can come into conflict. Is there anything wrong with getting more money, getting more power, getting more fame? Well, no, nothing's really wrong with that in itself, right? It's not like all Olympic champions and Olympic gold medal winners are all horrible people. No, some are great people, right? But it does become a problem, right? If your winning is, for instance, done in an unfair way, right? You win the gold medal, but you do that because you're on steroids and you're taking unfair advantage of other people. Well, that's a different thing. Or you make more money, but you do it because you have dishonest business practices, right? You're ripping off your clients and deceiving them and stuff. Yeah, you make lots of money at the expense of level 3. Right? So, almost everyone in our society gets out of pure level 1. Almost no one in our society is at pure level 1. Except for two kinds of people. One are babies, right? Newborn babies are pure level 1. I mean, think about it. Baby, all the baby cares about is, I want to be cozy, I want to have my stomach full, that's it, right? So newborns are pure level 1. Great. I mean, there's no baby in the crib like, I want to be better than that baby over there. I want to be the #1 baby in this whole nursery. I want
twins.
Twins, I don't know. The other people that are pure level 1 are hardcore addicts, right? I mean, some people that are so addicted to drugs or whatever, they literally will do anything for those drugs. Okay, but everybody else, certainly everyone here, is out of a pure level 1. So we move into level 2. What's level 2? Level 2 is about being better than others. It's about ego, it's about competition, it's about comparison. Right? So I get my level 2, if I say, well, I am I'm richer than you are. Right? I got a Rolex, you don't. I got a Mercedes, you don't, or whatever. Right? And level 2 has some advantages over level 1. For one thing, we recognize level 2 achievement. Right? If you're the richest person in the world, or a famous actor, or whatever, people will recognize you and honor that. Right? You might get an honorary doctorate from this university if you're a famous politician or a really rich person or whatever. Right? And level 2 also is more long-lasting. Right? I mean, if you're an Olympic champion, you win a gold medal, well, you're going to be famous. You can trade on that for the rest of your life. Right? You can ride around in a car with a big gold medal on the side of it or something. And if people, you can advertise that, you can sell that for the rest of your life. So that seems like a plus. Right? And it is harder to get than level 1, but it seems to be more long-lasting than level 1. So that seems like a plus. Right? But not only does level 2 have some advantages, the happiness of the egoist also has some disadvantages. So we should talk about that too. One of the disadvantages of level 2 is that at level 2, you're doing comparison, right? But you almost always compare yourself to people that are above you and better than you, right? And when you do that, that can make you seem relatively badly off, relatively worse off, right? So who do we compare ourselves to? Who do I compare myself to? Well, people that are richer than I am, et cetera, et cetera. And I seldom compare myself to people that are poorer than I am. And the fact is, almost everyone here, in fact, I bet everyone here, is richer than almost everyone in the world, right? I mean, Americans as a country are the most rich country in the world, right? So almost everyone here is very rich. And in fact, if you think about it in terms of history, it used to be the case that 99% of the people on the planet Earth were extremely poor. Almost all lived on like the equivalent of less than $2 a day. And I hope no one here is living on $2 a day, right? I mean, that would be really, really tough, right? And, you know, in fact, isn't it true that everyone here, I'm guessing, lives with more comfort and more wealth, in effect, than any king did in the Middle Ages, any ancient pharaoh did, any Roman emperor, right? I mean, everyone here, I hope, has Novocaine when they go to the dentist, right? The pharaoh didn't have a dentist or Novocaine, right? Neither, right? We've got air conditioning, we got cell phone, we can get in a plane and go across the country, right? King Louis XIV didn't have that. Emperor Nero didn't have that. We have all kinds of conveniences and luxuries and comforts that nobody had back in the day. And yet, I didn't wake up this morning and be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I have all this stuff. I'm doing better than Emperor Nero did, and better than the Pharaoh. Wow, super. I didn't do that. I mean, I doubt you did either. But the fact is, we're doing super well, at least in terms of those things. The trouble with level 2 is comparison leads to failure, ultimately. Think of this example. Michael Jackson, who's been in the news lately for other things. But before he died, he gave an interview. And Michael Jackson, as you probably know, had this album called Thriller. And do you know that Thriller sold more copies than any other album of all time? In fact, it sold so many copies that if you add up the second and third best-selling records of all time, which is AC/DC's Back in Black and Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, you put those together, it's still not as much as Thriller. So Thriller's not number one, like a little bit. It's like completely, totally number one, right? So Michael Jackson is the best-selling, had the best-selling album of all time by far. So one time in an interview though, before he died, he said, after Thriller, I spent the rest of my career trying to outdo Thriller. Right? So, in other words, even the person who was actually number one wasn't satisfied with it. Right? Even the person who's number one didn't find lasting satisfaction in level 2. And we're talking about music sales, so we can switch it to whatever. We can switch it to athletics, we can switch it to money, we can switch it to anything you want. I mean, let's think about money, for example. I tend to think, oh, if I just had a little more money, well, then I'd be comfortable, it'd be fine. And they do surveys of this. They ask people, well, how much more money would you need to be comfortable? Right? And they ask people making, $30,000 a year. And they say, well, if I just had about 10 or 15% more, then I'd be comfortable. I wouldn't need more than that. And they talk to people who make $100,000 a year. They say, how much more would you need to be comfortable? Not rich, but just comfortable. 10 or 15% more, then I'd be comfortable. Right? People that make $500,000 a year say the same thing. Right? When you get the idea, whatever level you get used to that. And pretty soon you're like, oh, this is fine, but I really need a little more. Right? In graduate school, I did need a little more. We were really poor. Really poor. So this was a while ago, of course, but I was making $10,000 a year, and I had 3 kids and my wife. I was the sole breadwinner. So you have 5 people, right, living on $10,000 a year. Now this was 1992 to 96, so it was a while ago. But still, $10,000, even back then, $10,000 a year for 5 people. That's not a lot of money. And I got my first job at Loyola, New Orleans, right? And the salary was $36,000. And I got there, and I was like, I am loaded. I'm just I'm richer than Midas. I thought I was so rich. I couldn't believe it. Like, we'd go to Wendy's and get whatever we wanted. We are rich. Go and get those fries. Woo! You know, after 5, 6, 7 months, I didn't feel that way anymore. I didn't. Right? And the same thing's true for all of us. Right? You could get a 30% raise, a 50% raise. You could double your salary. I almost quadrupled my salary. And it would be amazing for a few months. Oh, man, it's so great. And then pretty soon, you'd be just back to base. Right? Back to the baseline. Right? So if we want to move out of the baseline, what do we have to do? Well, we have to move out of level 2, out of level 1, into level 3. And the fact is, if we don't do this, we're never going to find lasting happiness. It is literally going to be impossible. Because think about it. Think about celebrities, right? Aren't Hollywood celebrities maximizing their level 1 happiness? Right? Isn't it true Hollywood celebrities, they can have more drugs than they can take to physically stay alive, more alcohol they can drink, more sex than, humanly possible. They have all that level 1 in absolute mega doses, right? And then what about level 2? Oh God, you're a Hollywood celebrity, you think you have level 2? You think you have money, you have fame, you have prestige, you have power? Right? Now, let me ask you guys, from what you know, are all Hollywood celebrities super happy? From what you know? You ever heard of Hollywood celebrities that are so deliriously happy, so overjoyed with life, that they end up going and killing themselves? Right? I mean, isn't this concrete proof, really beyond doubt, that you can have as much level 1 as humanly possible, as much level 2 as you can take, put them together, and you don't have much. Right? Now, do you need money? Of course you need money. In fact, research shows, if you're starving, right, if you don't eat 3 meals a day, and you have no place to sleep, and you don't have warm clothes, you're out there freezing, if I give you those things, you're going to be much more happy. So that's true. I mean, if you're not eating 3 meals a day, more money's going to be out. You're doing 3 meals a day, and you have a place to sleep, and clothes. But outside of that, it makes no difference. No difference. As long as you have those essential basic things, it doesn't make any difference. So what does make a difference? Well, what does make a difference is level 3 and level 4. Level 3 and level 4 are all about love. Right? That really makes a difference. Right? Loving relationships. There's a famous study done at Harvard University called the Grant Study. And it began with undergraduates, and it studied them all the way through their life. So they start off when people are like 18 or whatever, and they interviewed them at 22 and 32, 42, and it ended only when the last people died, at like 95 or something. So this was going on for decades and decades. It's like millions and millions of dollars. And what did they find? Well, they asked the lead researcher of the Grant Study, what's the conclusion after all these decades and all the research? And they said, well, it's pretty simple. Happiness is love. Full stop. Right? Those people that had love in their life, they had loving family, loving friends, they served others, those people had great lives, and those people that didn't, no matter how much money they made, no matter how famous they got, it didn't add up too much. Right? So level 3 is about love. It's about serving others. And if we do that, if we have level 3, that transcends level 2. But level 3, even as good as it is nevertheless deficient in certain ways. It has its big advantages, way better than level 2 and 1, but it's still not everything that we want. Right? Because think about it. We want love. That's true. But isn't it true, don't you know from experience, that all human loves are imperfect? Right? As beautiful as love is, as beautiful as friendship is, no one has friends that are perfect. Right? The loving relationship always has some misunderstandings and some problems and some ups and downs, right? And we want perfect goodness. But can any human being really claim to be perfectly good? Even the very best of people are not perfectly good. They have faults and flaws and bad days and things that we should do, right? And isn't it true that we want perfect truth? But no human being can deliver on that either. We want perfect love, perfect goodness, and perfect truth, and no one here on planet Earth can deliver that for us. So we have, in other words, transcendent desires that can only be satisfied by a transcendent object. And so that's why level 4, the altruistic faith, is about loving your neighbor and about loving God, both. And you can't have level 4 without level 3. If I say, oh God, I love you so much, and then I'm rude and evil and harming my neighbor, Well, that's an inherent contradiction. Why? Well, because if I love God, well then, of course I love the image of God that I find in other people. So if I claim to love God and I'm not really loving other people, well, I'm just being inconsistent. I'm not really loving God at all. Because if I did, well, I'd also love the image of God. Now, how does all this relate to healthcare and to the dignity of the person? Well, just as there are these 4 levels of happiness, so too, there are 4 different ways of valuing human beings. So imagine, you're not here, but imagine you're a pure level 1 person. Right? What you think is right for level 1, you think pleasure and pain are the only things that really count. Right? That's the only thing that really matters, pleasure and pain. So if you think this, well, how will you look at other human beings? And how will you look at yourself for that matter? Well, you look at yourself and other human beings, you say, well, if you're having a lot of bodily pleasure, great. You count, you're valuable. But let's say you're not. Let's say you're sick. Let's say you've got cancer. Let's say you got a serious health problem. Well, are you going to have lots of bodily pleasure? No. And so people, you might look at other people, you might look at yourself and say, you know what? I'm worthless. My life is not worth living. And so you might think, I'm better off dead. You might think of other people, you're better off dead. You don't got a lot of bodily pleasure? It actually kill you out of mercy. It's a level 1 perspective. And you might think of human beings that can't experience pleasure and pain. Like say prenatal human beings or human beings at the end of life that are unconscious. You say, again, they're worthless. They're just chunks of meat. Just get rid of them. You have a level 2 perspective. How do you look at other people? Right? And yourself. Well, you say, you count, you're valuable if you're productive. Are you making lots of money? Oh, you're very valuable. Right? Are you poor? Well, you're not valuable. You're not productive. You're not worth much. Are you famous? Oh, you're worth a lot. Are you just a regular person who really knows? You're not really worth much. Are you powerful, physically, mentally? You're able to really do great things? Wow, you're really valuable. You're weak, you're ignorant, you can't do much. You're not really valuable at all. So from a level 2 perspective, other people and yourself have only functional value. Right? If you're functioning well, you're valuable. If you're not, you're not. So you can see how in the field of healthcare, how this is going to affect things. Right? You're going to treat people differently based on how well they're functioning. You're going to see, well, you have value if you function well, you don't function well, you're not working. But what about level 3? Well, level 3, right, it's about love, it's about service. And if you think about it, when you serve other people, isn't it true, you serve them insofar as they need help. Right? And imagine I came over to you and said, hey, you look like you really need help like putting on your shoes. So I'm just going to put on your shoes for you and tie your shoes and cut up your food for you and feed you bite by bite. Well, that's not going to help you at all, I'm guessing, right? And you can do all that yourself, right? So I help you insofar as you need help, right? So maybe you need help with philosophy or logic or something. Maybe I can help you with that. But I can't help you since you look like an able-bodied person by cutting up your food and feeding you food, right? So we help others insofar as they're needy and vulnerable, right? And so from a level 3 perspective, the fact that someone's vulnerable, needy, does not count against them. In fact, just the reverse. From a level 3 perspective, if you're an altruist, the fact that someone's needy and vulnerable is a great reason to help them, right? They're poor. Great. We want to get you a job. We want to get you on your feet. They're ignorant. Great. We want to teach you, right? They're physically suffering. Great. We want to try to relieve your pain. Right? They got a broken arm. Oh, great. We're going to put a cast on there. We're going to fix you up. Right? They've got cancer. We're going to get you the best cancer treatment we can so that you're healthy again. Right? We serve these people insofar as they're vulnerable, needy, injured, right? Disabled, etc. Right? And then what about level 4? Well, level 4 is like level 3. Right? Vulnerability doesn't count against you. The fact that you're a patient, the fact that you're needy, that's okay. We still care about you. But it adds, you might say, a transcendent dimension. This is captured, I think, very beautifully in our Declaration of Independence. Right? These words, very famous words, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So what does that mean, all men? Right? I've looked into this actually. So some people misinterpret this, and they think Jefferson, the original author of those words, meant all adult Protestant landowning males. Not true. From other writings in Jefferson's work, it's very clear. He means men in the inclusive sense, to mean all human beings. Black, white, Native American, male, female, it doesn't matter, everybody. Right? Now, did Jefferson live up to this? He didn't. But what did he mean? He meant everybody. He meant everybody. All human beings. And people at level 4 have a theological justification for this. Right? That all human beings are made in God's image. That all human beings are made by God. Right? Aquinas, for instance, held that all human beings are made really by 3. They're made by their mother, who gives something, their father, who gives something, and by God, who gives the soul. So each one of us, on Aquinas' view at least, are directly made by God, and of course by our parents too. All 3 cooperate. Right? And, on the theological view at least, not only are human beings made by God, they're called to a relationship with God. Right? As their final end, as their ultimate goal. They're called to pursue holiness in this life and heavenly happiness in the next life. So from a level 4 perspective, like the level 3, all human beings count. All human beings are valuable. And at least if you're Christian, the Christian view intensifies this, because Jesus makes our care of vulnerable people a basis for our final judgment. I mean, you guys know this famous passage from Matthew, right? Where Jesus at the end of time says to 2 groups of people, right? He says to one group, right, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was naked and you clothed me. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. And to those people, he says, come into the kingdom of heaven. And then to the other group of people, he says, I was hungry and you did not feed me. Thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. Naked and you didn't clothe me. A stranger and you didn't welcome me. And those go off to eternal punishment. So from a Christian perspective, we have the very most serious reasons for helping people in need. Because Jesus, of course, wasn't simply talking about hungry people and thirsty people. He's talking about, people that are in need. And it could be a need of education. That's why institutions like this are so important. Of course we have bodily needs. Of course we have healthcare needs. But we also have needs of the mind. And just as you can be starving physically, you can be starving intellectually, starving spiritually, starving mentally. And this whole institution is meant to supply that need. Just as a hospital is meant to supply healthcare needs, physical health needs. Right? So all of us, in different ways, are called to this mission, right, of serving the vulnerable. And depending on who you are, you might have different ways of doing that. So if you're a healthcare provider, you're serving people insofar as they're vulnerable in terms of their physical well-being. Right? You've got some sort of physical problem, and you try to supply that. If you're an educator, you're serving people that are vulnerable because they're ignorant. They don't know things that they really need to know. Right? So you're helping educate them, helping them to have spiritual and intellectual sustenance. Right? If you're a parent, you're doing this. Right? This passage about I was hungry and fed me, I remember hearing this when I was a kid in church, and I looked around and I thought, oh my gosh, everyone here is going to hell. Right? I mean, who does this? Like Mother Teresa and her sisters, there's like a few select people that go out and do this. And I thought, no one does it. We're all going straight to hell. This is terrible, right? But when I had kids, I realized, well, a good father, a good mother, right, literally does all these things. Right? Child's hungry, you feed the child. Child's thirsty, you give the child something to drink. Child's naked, and you clothe the child. And isn't it true that every child comes into a family as a stranger? You don't know what you're going to get. Is the kid going to be great and athletic? Is the kid going to be last picked at recess, totally clumsy? Are they going to be beautiful and top of the class and the prom queen or whatever? Are they going to never have a date? Right? Are they going to be friendly? Are they going to be crabby? You don't know. But if you are a good parent, right, you accept that child, the stranger, into your home. You love them, you take care of them. So maybe on the last day, the good Lord will look at us. Right? Some of us try to be good mothers and good fathers. Some of us try to be good educators. Some of us try to be good healthcare professionals. And maybe on the basis of that, the good Lord will say to us, come into the kingdom. Thanks very much. questions? Yes?
So the virtue of magnanimity is generosity, charity, and benevolence. So you're saying that virtue is in number 4 because it's for God, and virtue's from God, but not in number 3.
Okay, so Aquinas' view, at least, is that there are two different kinds of virtue. So Aquinas talks about acquired virtue, and this he gets from Aristotle. An acquired virtue is a virtue that you get through your own action. So for instance, if I want the acquired virtue of courage, I have to repeatedly do courageous acts. And my son's an officer in the Marines, so I know a little bit about Marine training. And part of Marine training is trying to help you gain the virtue of courage. So what do you have to do? They do all kinds of things that are like dangerous and hard and require courage. And then they ramp it up. Like the beginning training is like, hard and doing some stuff, and then they train more and it's like even harder, and then they keep doing it until, they're doing amazing things. They habituate themselves to being uncomfortable, really pushing themselves, not giving in to fear, and so they become more courageous over time. So that's an acquired virtue. Aquinas also talks about what he calls an infused virtue. An infused virtue is a strength that enables us to become happier, that is a gift from God, not something we acquire through our own repeated activity. So it'd be a little bit like I can make myself have better vision if I pick up eyeglasses and put them on. Right? So that's an acquired virtue. I've given myself, you might say, better vision. But I could go to the laser eye surgeon, and then he zaps my eye with a laser, and by the power of the surgeon, then I have better vision. Okay? So that's a little bit akin to the infused virtues that Aquinas talks about. And those are virtues that are not acquired through I repeatedly over and over did, courageous acts, but rather are given by God and not acquired through my repeated action. So both of these virtues are, for Aquinas, very important, because if we don't have virtue, he thinks we're not going to be able to achieve happiness. Because think about it, level 3 and level 4 is about love, as I said, but if you don't have the virtues, you're really not able to love very effectively. Why? Well, think about the virtue of courage. Courage is about what? It's about loving God and other people in situations in which it's going to be risky for you. It's going to be dangerous for you. You might lose something, right? And so what happens if you lack courage? Well, you might start off with some good intentions, say, I really want to love God and neighbor, but you get in a difficult situation, all of a sudden it takes some courage, things are on the line, and you're going to fold like a house of cards. Say, oh, it's too hard, I can't do it. I give up. I surrender. Put up the white flag. You lack courage. Same thing's true with temperance. So what is temperance? Temperance is enjoying level 1 happiness, bodily pleasures, insofar as they don't interfere with love of God and love of neighbor. Right? So if you don't have temperance, what happens? You have good intentions, and you think, oh, I enjoy alcohol moderately. Okay, so far so good. But then you start drinking, and all of a sudden you drink too much, and then you get in the car and drive home, and you run over somebody. Right? So you'd have the lack of temperance leads to a lack of love for God and neighbor. Practical wisdom is another virtue for Aquinas. And that has to do with choosing the right means in a particular situation to express love for God and love of neighbor. So if you lack practical wisdom, you're not going to be able to figure out what you should do in a particular situation. Right? You'll know, oh yeah, I should be loving, but then how to do that? What that demands here and now, you have no clue. So you don't know how to do it. And the final virtue that Aquinas talks about is justice. And justice is giving to each person what's due to that person. And you can see right away how if you don't have justice, you can't have love either. Right? I mean, if you're doing unjust things, stealing people's stuff, harming other people, trashing their reputation, well, obviously that's incompatible with really loving someone. If I'm stealing your stuff and harming you and trashing your reputation, well, that's the opposite of loving you. So justice is a prerequisite for love. You can't really love anybody unless you're minimally just to them and not taking their stuff, etc., etc. So Aquinas thinks these virtues are absolutely essential. And again, the two ways to get them are through repeated activity on the one hand, and through infusion on the other. And how do you get the infused virtues? Well, you get those, he thinks, through the sacramental life. God infuses them through baptism, first of all. And then God re-infuses them, for instance, through the sacrament of reconciliation. So if you're Catholic, you're really lucky because you have every day, practically, or every Saturday at least, an opportunity to reinfuse those infused virtues into yourself, right? I mean, the fact is, everybody does things that are wrong, right? Secular people, atheists, Protestant, whatever, everybody does things that are wrong. Every honest person knows that. And so it's a little bit like making garbage. Everybody makes garbage, right? Every day, you eat a banana, you got the peel. It's just, humans do that. And so imagine you didn't take out the garbage, right? You eat a banana, throw it in the corner, and have this, throw that in the corner, Burger King wrapper, and then, that's not a big deal one day, but it starts piling up. Right? Imagine you don't take out the garbage for a month, 2 months, 6 months, 5 years. And it's going to be awful, it's going to stink, it's going to be just terrible, right? So confession is a little bit like taking out the garbage, right? You make garbage in your life, you got to get rid of it, throw it out, start over, have a clean slate, right? That's what that's about. So good question, thanks. Any other questions? Yeah.
You did a great job with this, but connecting it back to what I've been doing this a long time. And healthcare is becoming a consumer industry.
Right.
So it is being judged by level 1, level 2, and
Yeah.
some level 3s, but not all.
Yeah.
In your and in grant study, you were talking about happiness. And it's funny how those never recognize this kind of studies. They talk about two things, and even did an inner city in that study. You know what they did? They were on for 180 years.
Yeah.
But then they took away education as one of them. Now, inner city,
Yeah.
minority people, the same two things came up: genetics and relationships.
Yeah.
That was the two things that really came out of this
Yeah.
stuff. So if we're pushing healthcare, and that's what we're talking about as far as what we do, then why are we not addressing level 4 very much?
Yeah.
There's a fear factor. There's other stories about economics and other
Yeah.
I'm working presently on this spiritual wellness program.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how what we focus on in men, and a lot of it, I'm sure in California,
Yeah.
it's all about men's health, it's all about hormones and other things. It's not really touching spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get one, I think what you're talking about is how is healthy?
Yeah.
Or how can we encourage healthcare to go past level 1, level 2, where's the economic end?
Yeah.
Where's even some of the virtuous stuff from healthcare?
Yeah. Great. Yeah, so healthcare is obviously aimed at health, right? So then the question is, well, what exactly is health? And I talked a little bit about this last night, that health can be interpreted in different ways. And one way to interpret it is how the WHO interprets it, the World Health Organization, and they interpret health in a very, very broad way. They say health is well-being, physical, social, economic, it's total complete well-being. And I actually don't agree with that definition of health, because I think it's too broad. I mean, if you're a healthcare professional, you're a nurse or a doctor, say, you're not trying to provide total well-being, total flourishing for your patient. There are some parts of human flourishing, like having friends, that just fall outside the scope of the proper role of the doctor or a nurse. Right? It's not the job of the nurse or the doctor to arrange your social life, to arrange your friends. Now they might want to say, hey, if you seem lonely, you should try to get some friends. But it's not their job as a doctor, a nurse, to be your friend, to get new friends, to sign you up for the bowling league. That's just not part of their job. So what is their job? Well, healthcare is about physical well-being and to a degree mental well-being. Let's focus on the physical well-being. It's about making your body function properly, right? So your heart pumps blood properly, your liver's working. And so it's an objective flourishing in one respect, in terms of your physical well-being. So if that's the goal of medicine, to restore or to promote the physical flourishing of the human organism, well, then you can see how medicine can get corrupted. For instance, if someone made the goal of medicine not really the physical well-being of the patient, but making more money, that's corruption. Or not really the physical well-being of the patient, but fame. So some doctors do this. They want to perfect some surgery, and maybe you don't really fit the parameters of it, whatever, but I want to be the famous surgeon, so I'm going to do surgery on you so I can increase my fame. Well, I would say that's a corruption of medicine. In other words, when, rather than focusing on the individual well-being of the patient, these exterior things are really the focus. Making more money, being more famous, getting more power, or whatever, that's a corruption of medicine. Just as it's a corruption of medicine, was a corruption of medicine in France, when a doctor, Dr. Guillotine, came up with this way of chopping off people's heads. Now that's not the role of a doctor to figure figure out how to kill, how to do capital punishment. That's not really the role of a doctor. But, that's kind of corruption. So, does healthcare have a spiritual aspect? It seems to me it certainly can. There's no two ways about it. And many people go into medicine precisely out of a level 4 perspective. In other words, they want to love God by loving their neighbor, and they want to love their neighbor in particular through helping them have better physical health. Right? Now, how does spiritual well-being fit into that? Well, I would say, just as social well-being is not exactly the doctor's job, take care of my friendships and social well-being, so too, I would say, the doctor is doctor and the nurse is nurse. It's not really his or her job to take care or help me take care of my spiritual well-being. Like, that's really important, it's super important, but it's not exactly the job of the doctor to promote that. Now, can a doctor do things to promote that? Can a nurse do things to promote that? Of course they can. They can pray with patients, they can pray for patients even if they don't know about it. They can make people aware of spiritual opportunities. It's not really their job as a doctor or as a nurse to promote spiritual well-being. Then there are people that have trained to do that. For instance, people that are spiritual directors, right? Their training is precisely to try to promote spiritual well-being. Priests and nuns, presumably part of their training is precisely to promote spiritual well-being. But I don't think the doctor, again, the doctor's doctor, I think, or nurses, really, healthcare professionals really looking at physical well-being more than anything else. Right? That's the primary goal. But that can be undermined by those other goals too. Right? Just making
I think you're right, but I do think that what I'm reading here is that medicine should also promote you or guide you to that spiritual concept. And if you do it,
Yeah.
you can surely say, there's some things you can do here that are beyond what I'm going to give you a prescription.
Yeah, that seems totally right. And actually, I do think that's a good point, because part of what a doctor or a nurse does, I think, is to help educate the patient. I do think that's really part of it, to help them to know, these are the things you should avoid, these are the things you can do. And as you probably know, there's lots of evidence that people who practice the faith are better off in terms of all kinds of parameters. Right? They tend to live longer, they tend to be happier, they really do quite well. And so it seems to me that to make that available, to even, suggest things, that seems to me that can be
But
appropriate.
that's going in other directions.
Yeah.
So I think that's the point.
Okay.
We're doing all this wellness stuff, and everybody's all about wellness, and every insurance
Yeah.
company I know is all about wellness.
Yeah.
But the problem is, we're going in the other direction for what you just said, which is the faith, the growth of faith and things is going in the other direction. So
Yeah.
are we really getting well?
Yeah. Well, it's
Is it
me.
baseline?
Yeah. Well, when you talk about getting well, it depends on what metric you're talking about. Right? So you can be
That's a
doing
curse word.
you can be doing well in a certain respect and not be doing well in another respect. So here's an example. So many young people, 20-year-olds, are doing well in terms of physical health. Like you say, how healthy are you? Like they're really healthy. They can run fast, they got strong muscles, no cancer, etc. Now, are they doing well in every respect? Well, maybe not. They might be very lonely. They might not have friends. They might have no spiritual life. Who knows? And then you can get someone who's not doing so well in terms of physical health, and yet is absolutely flourishing in other respects. Right? They love other people. They love God. They've got a rich social life. They've got a rich intellectual life. But maybe physically they're not doing so well. So wellness is a complex thing, right? Because we're complex. Right? Part of us is physical, obviously. Part of us is mental. Part of us is spiritual. Part of us is social. We're multidimensional beings. So if I talk about your wellness, it's too simplistic just to simply focus just on this one thing. Oh, now you're well, because this one aspect of you is doing well. Well, okay, great. That part's doing well. But maybe other parts are not doing so well. So love, when we love another person, we care about all aspects of them. But it could be the case that given your training, you only really are competent to talk about or to help a person in one dimension more than others. So for instance, I'm an educator, right? So if you ask me questions about Thomas Aquinas, hopefully I can make you better in terms of that, because I know something about that. But if you ask me questions about, I've got a blood pressure problem, what do I do? Like, I would just have to punt on that and say, well, that's important. I care about you, so I care about your bad blood pressure. I honestly don't know what you should do. I should go to the doctor, right? Go to a medical doctor. Hopefully you'll get whatever you need to get. I just don't know, right? Because nobody knows everything, right? So we have to work together. right? People that know about this should help with this, people who know about that should help with that. Good, other questions? Yes, sir.
How do you make the journey from, like level 4 happiness, like loving God and loving neighbor, how do you make the connection between that and like the ultimate end, which is like peace?
Yeah.
Or is level 4 happiness synonymous with peace?
Yeah, so there's different ways to understand what peace is, but peace can be understood as a tranquility of order. That's Augustine's way of talking about peace. So what does that mean? Well, someone who loves God and loves neighbors, you might say, is ordered properly. That is to say, they love the greatest thing the most, and they love lesser things the least. By contrast, think about someone who loves money too much, right? A disordered love of money. So think of people who love money so much that they'll kill someone to get more money. They love money so much that they'll cheat somebody to get more money. Well, that would be a disordered love of money. That's called greed, right? Loving money too much. Loving anything too much, right? It becomes a disorder, right? So Aquinas' idea of the final end is perfect happiness. And perfect happiness is when a person is completely and perfectly filled with love of God, knowledge of God, and a relationship with God. And for Aquinas, at least, he thinks that that is perfect human happiness. And he thinks that it's actually impossible here on planet Earth. He thinks it's impossible for us to perfectly love God and neighbor here and now, in part because of our weak human bodies, right? We can't constantly do any activity, right? Because we get tired, we need to eat, we just get sick. But there's all kinds of things that happen. So we need downtime that interrupts our loving of others. But he thinks in heaven we are able to have a continuous love of God and continuous love of neighbor that's uninterrupted. So I don't know if that answers your question. Is that good? Any other question?
I was just going to talk about back to the physical and the mental. I do see us in healthcare trying to bridge some gaps, but we still operate in silos to some degree.
Yeah.
Like when I go to my PCP, I mean, they now ask me, am I happy most of the time, or am I depressed, or how much do I drink, that kind of thing.
Right.
And I work in mental health, behavioral health.
Right.
So we get to address that part, and we certainly do make sure that we either address the physical or refer that out, but we're still not holistic.
Right,
We
right.
I don't think anyone really has that holistic approach yet in healthcare. The closest that I've experienced in my career, I'm a nurse, I've been in behavioral health most of that, I've been in telemetry and medicine, but I did a lot of work in addiction. And the closest that I would say that we've come to that type of holistic approach was with our addicted clients. We would take care of their physical, we would take care of their mental and their spiritual. Because I've always worked in 12-step programs with
Right.
their spiritual programs.
Right, right.
And it was really, I have to say, the most difficult work in my career, and also the most rewarding to work with addiction.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I do think addiction is a kind of overlap area, because it's not purely physical. There can certainly be a physical element of it. And is it purely a mental health thing? Well, I think that is involved too, but I think it's not just that. So yeah, that's a really interesting point where you have a kind of overlap of these three things. I guess the challenge for holistic treatment, it seems to me, is that, for instance, the knowledge of the physical well-being of the person is so complex and has such depth that it takes years to really become an expert. Right? And it seems to me that mental health is also challenging and deep. And then spiritual well-being is also challenging. So in other words, I think that part of the challenge is almost no one has the training, like I'm an expert physician in terms of physical well-being. I'm also an expert psychologist in terms of mental well-being. I'm also expert in spiritual matters. There might be somebody out there who has that, but this is very rare, right? So how can we help people? Well, probably by working together as a team, right? You've got someone who is the physical well-being expert. You've got someone who's the psychologist, the mental well-being expert. You've got someone who's a spiritual expert, and they all coordinate and they all work together. And that's why Catholic healthcare is such a wonderful and beautiful thing, right? Because you do have that. Right? You've got the physical people, those experts in that. You've got people working in mental health. And you also have the spiritual dimension. right? I mean, you guys here have a chapel, you've got the chaplain, you have priests that come around and hear confessions or anoint the sick, etc. So you've got all aspects sort of, available for the patient. And with some things, right, it's more purely a physical thing. If someone breaks their leg, this is like not a mental health problem. This is we gotta get a cast on. Some things are just mental health problems. They're not really physical. And some things are really spiritual. Now, exactly when someone comes in, it may be unclear exactly what they need. I mean, sometimes it's very clear, it's a broken leg, but sometimes it's not. So people work together and say, hey, this is really a physical issue. We've got to get the person, whatever, Prozac, I don't know. This is really a mental health issue. This person needs counseling, they need to get their life together, need to learn how to deal with relationships or whatever. This person really is having a spiritual issue, right? They are not having love of God, right? They're really feeling alienated from God. We need to help this person to feel refreshed and rejuvenated in terms of their relationship with God. So, you get different people with different problems, and sometimes people have a bit of all three, and that makes it very complex.
I have a question.
Yes.
I've been doing some research on social media and anxiety and depression,
Yeah.
and so particularly with young adults, 18 to 35. So from your talk, it's my observation that a lot of young people are stuck at that level 3, but they also have a disorder because it's affected by levels 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
So in your work, have you seen like an increase of level 3, and people are stuck at level 3 and less of moving forward to level 1? Because I do a lot of service, and
Mhm.
so when I do a lot of service on our campus, I want to make sure that the students are getting more out of it than just serving and getting the self-gratification out of it. I mean, it brings self-gratification, but if they do it just for that all the time, they're stuck at that level.
Yeah. It's I know that social media, excessive use of it can be detrimental. So you think about it a little bit like salt, right? You put a little salt in your fries, that's fine. If you dump, a pound of salt on your French fries, it's disgusting and horrible. So I think sometimes people are excessive in terms of their use of social media. I mean, people that are on Instagram and Facebook just for hours and hours and hours, this is not good at all. There's lots of research that shows an inverse relationship between, using Facebook, whatever, or using social media, and feeling connected to others. And it's weird because you think, well, I'm always connected to others. I'm liking people's photos, I'm always doing that. But in fact, for human beings, connection isn't, you're never able to really get real connection to people unless you actually have real people and real face-to-face contact. It's not enough just to like their photos or whatever. The other thing about social media is it seems that it's pretty much stuck at level 2. So what I mean is social media lends itself to social comparison, right? So you're looking at someone's, meal at this fancy restaurant, right? And comparing yourself to them. And you think, oh God, I didn't go to that fancy restaurant. Look how cool they are. They're great. Now they didn't post on social media that at the restaurant they got in a huge fight with their, girlfriend, and she just told them to go to hell. They didn't post that, right? They just post the thing that looks good, right? And that's what everyone's doing, right? I've never gone on social media and said, oh my God, I got in a huge fight with my wife. Oh, Lord, she called me names, I called her names. It was a catastrophe. Here's the video of it. You want to see it? No one does that, right? No one does that, right? Oh, you do? Okay, well, few people do that. Okay. So when you compare, you despair, right? When you compare, you despair, because almost always you compare yourselves to those that are doing better, or at least seem to you at the moment to be doing better. So I think that the excessive use of social media can really be detrimental to people.
And it's addictive when you're around young people, they're always on their phone.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you always, on your phone? And it's, I don't know. So it's an addictive
Yeah,
behavior.
well, I actually do know why. The companies set it up so that they want you. They make more money the more you're looking at your phone and looking at whatever, the more they can sell to advertisers. Say, hey, I got this guy on his phone 6 hours a day, give us more advertising money. He's mentally healthy, probably physically healthy and spiritually healthy too, to limit, right? And this is a great time to try to do that. This is Lent, right? At least for Catholics. And during Lent, it's the time, Lent means, it comes from a word meaning to grow. I think of the days are growing longer, more and more light each day as we're getting closer. And so Lent's a time of growth. Right, so, you know, getting a handle on that Facebook and Instagram or whatever is, you know, that could be an opportunity of growth. So what would that mean? Well, what if you limited it? What if you said, hey, I'm only gonna do it, you know, once a day, checking my whatever. Could you do that? Or what if you said, I'm gonna, only do it for 1 hour a day, looking at whatever. But if you, and some people I know, get off the thing for the whole night. They're not looking at Facebook for a minute, or Instagram or whatever. So, but it does seem to be a pretty good idea for, again, most people to limit that. Again, like salt. Is there anything wrong with a little salt? No. Too much salt in every meal, as you know, healthcare professionals, not a good idea. A little fat's okay, a little ice cream's okay, but what if you have ice cream every single meal, huge, huge bowls? That's not a good idea, right? You gotta cut it down. Exactly. You know, manageable amounts. Now, one last thing, great question though, how can service connect you to God? It certainly can connect you to God. I remember hearing a famous, this guy gave this talk one time, and he was talking about God and healthcare and stuff. And someone raised their hand and said, do you really believe all that nonsense about God? And he said, yeah, I do. And then the kid was talking about it in the lecture, and this was a physician, and he got out his scripture guide. He said, look, I'm not going to argue with you about God's existence, but here's what I want you to do. He wrote this out. Prescription guide, right? So he said to him, what I want you to do is, for the next week, I want you to treat the people in your life as if they were Jesus. So the guy went and, you know, walked in the door, and there's mom was doing the dishes, and he imagined them. Well, if that were Jesus and they were doing the dishes, I probably would go and help him pitch in. How's that his mom? And then his dad comes home from work. It's a spoken thing. He thinks, God, if that was Jesus coming in the door from work, I would go over and talk to him. I'd be like, God, how was work? You know? So he does that. He sits down at dinner. And he's hungry, you know, they have their dinner, and there's only one hamburger left. And his little brother sits next to him, and he thinks to him, I'm kind of hungry, but you know, if that was Jesus sitting next to him, I'd probably give him, you know, his burger. So he did. And after a week, the guy went back to this other guy and said, I do believe in God. So his way to God was through action. And that's true of a lot of people, I think. People get concerned, like, oh, do I believe in God? And like, kind of feeling their spiritual pulse. I'm not sure that's the right method. It seems to me it's a much better method to act as if God exists. Right? Maybe you think God exists, maybe you think God doesn't exist, okay. But what if you acted as if God existed? What if you acted as if serving others was serving Jesus? What if you acted in such a way as you would act if you love God with your whole heart and love your neighbor as yourself? It seems to me if we try to do that, we wouldn't need to worry so much about, you know, our spiritual